Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your cannabis business podcast. Today we've got JJ McKay. He is the founder and publisher of the Fresh Toast. JJ, thanks for being on the Talking Hedge.
I am thrilled to be with you, Josh.
Likewise. For those who haven't heard of the Fresh Toast, they're living under a rock somewhere or whatever. Why don't you tell the audience what the Fresh Toast is and then how you got involved?
Well, for the million plus that see us every day, we're a content generator. But as a company, we are a media content company that produces fresh content every day, a majority of it being either cannabis, medical marijuana, or CBD. We run it on our site. We share it out on our social media. And we have about 1.5 million people following us on Facebook on the Fresh Toast News or the Fresh Toast. And we're launching a new site this week, the Fresh Toast Health. And then we turn around and then syndicate that content out to newspapers around the US and Canada. So in Canada, our partner is Post Media, and they've shared about 28% of all stories read in Canada on marijuana are our stories. And then in the United States, our big partner is Tribune Publishing and Tribune Content Agencies. So our stuff goes out to cities all over the country every day.
That's great. So if people have stories and they want published, are you kind of an intermediary for that? Do you accept
No.
people's work? You don't.
Well, and the other thing is the other side of our house, we're kind of a bifurcated company. We also are we partner with the largest medical training company in the United States. They have 1.7 million licensed healthcare professionals, of which 800,000 are physicians, which represents 80% of the practicing physicians in the US and 80% of all clinical investigators. So we work and we train them every month, or sometimes more than a month, on how to have the conversation around medical marijuana and how to look at that. And then we also are working with them. We're rolling out a new division in the next week that will deepen our relationship with that. And that's a 7-year exclusive partnership we have with them.
That's great. So actually you're getting into the healthcare system and getting them to kind of know more about cannabinoids, CBD, THC, whatever.
Is, we're very consumer focused. So we're very much, so we get lots of data every day. I mean, we have hundreds of thousands of people look at our stories. And so we know what people are interested in. And I will be in conversations with the industry, and the industry is full of a bunch of, I like to call it, they're a bunch of sommeliers, sometimes trying to talk to people at Applebee's. And there's a mixture of the message, and the sommeliers don't always get where the people at the Applebee's are coming from. So they'll say one thing and they'll say another. So like in the medical field, part of the issue is everybody's like, well, they should be prescribing weed now, medical marijuana now. And, there's not a process system within healthcare for that. But once it's federally legalized, there will be, and there'll be a reimbursement number and so forth. So right now, if you're a doctor, you don't have a reimbursement code, so you make no money off of doing it all, and it cuts into your patient time. You can't guarantee that the product you prescribe will be the product that they actually get, because there's such variance amongst products between states and sometimes within own batches. And then last but not least, if you prescribe that over a more traditional medication, it doesn't work and there's a harmful side effect. And the harmful side effect could be, hey, we tried this, but your asthma didn't get any better. I'm just making that up. And it got significantly worse, then that opens them up for malpractice. So there's multiple things for it to be mainstreamed into the medical community. But once the FDA steps in, what you're going to see an immediate change on how medical marijuana is used.
I love that top-down approach, but how do you complete this cycle? Can you end up talking to bud tenders in the same way with information in the back office and then consumers somehow? How do you, or is it just that? Is it just that the nurses teach everybody and it trickles down?
Well, we have two approaches. So one approach is we go to where the customer is. We don't make the customer come to us. They're already reading the Chicago Tribune, the Toronto Star, they're already out there reading, the Miami Herald. They're already reading that information. And so we go to where it is, and if it tickles their fancy, they read it and then they learn more. But we reach such a broad scale that all of a sudden you're seeing a change in perception. And, we reach into, Two of our biggest readership states are Texas and Florida. So we have a huge distribution there. And so we talk to people about what it is. And then on the reverse, they then have the tools to have a conversation with their medical professional that is much more fact-based and expectation-based. So you asked earlier about we're not a PR firm. We create our own original content, and we have a very strict editorial policy of how all of our stories are very laid out similar. We're very much like a newspaper.
Mhm. Well, what are some of your favorite stories from last year? I mean, I'm sure there's thousands of them. Do you have one that stands out for any given reason from last year?
Well, our number one story, because we do some things other than weed, is the Guinness Book World Record of sex. That's always a top story every weekend. Every weekend. So it's nice to know that for those that were in some type of relationship, there's a great adventure going out there in the United States right now. Then what we saw, which is unfortunate, we saw a lot of trends on anxiety. We did a lot of medical stories around managing anxiety, managing depression,
Mhm.
um, and managing um, aches and pains. I think people were trying to try different exercise routines, and they used CBD and or cannabis to help them when they didn't have someone guiding them correctly, and they might have had an oopsie on tweaking something or pulling something.
There's a lot of people that were taking edibles this year, and I'm curious if you saw some of those trends in the industry and in some of the articles with people staying at home, a transfer from the topicals that you would see to more edibles, and I'm wondering uh, consumer um, if that consumer behavior trend was temporary just during the lockdown, like people were eating a lot of sweets and edibles and everything, or is it going back more towards the holistic approach? Was that a temporary change in consumer behavior, um, or people just looking for all kinds of alternatives in addition to flour?
So we get a lot of, so great question. We get a, so I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna answer it kind of a broader way.
Yeah.
We get a lot of feedback of of how the product is used. So we work with great companies that give us POS, point of sale data, that says, weed flower is the number one way people still consume.
Mm.
Edibles is probably the least way they consume, and that includes beverage. But edibles is usually the least traumatic way to enter if you've never done it, because you're doing something that you're used to. You're eating something. So with people who do edibles, what happens is they tend to overindulge, or they want to try multiple things, and it's usually a journey. And so if their first time using an edible does well, then they can go on to it. And we have a whole series of articles around Friday, Saturday, and Sunday always turn out to be really high performers on that. How to come down from a high, what to do with an edible. But we saw a lot more interest in it, and part of it goes back to brought down anxiety, brought down depression. I'm home all by myself. Why not try it? I mean, I'm tired of drinking. You saw a period where pre-COVID, California beer drinking on the first part of the week was on the way down. So now you have people who are doing this as a way to get through. Vaping is really popular. We've seen a lot of people vape because
Mhm.
it's not as intrusive.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stigma behind taking a joint, because people don't want to look like that typical hippie in their mind. And so we provide other aspects. And we also try to put it into context of, hey, it's no different than having a tequila shot.
Mhm. Yeah, you'll see that a lot in Arizona where vaping is a lot more popular. Washington pre-rolls are a lot more popular, and it's because of the stigma conservative down there in Arizona. But maybe that'll open up now that it's adult use. Um, Curious about East Coast, West Coast. We have the old school states, Washington, Colorado, even we'll throw them in there, Nevada, even Oregon, been around for a few years, 5 years maybe, on the adult use market. And wondering whether the stories you see on West Coast, East Coast, emerging markets versus traditional or older markets, what are you seeing out there? Because I kind of look at New York as, the financial hub, and yet just a few years ago they didn't even know anything about dabbing. So now that everything's kind of going on board, and New Jersey's legalized, and Virginia's trying to, and all these states are trying to get out of debt, and cure their budget woes. What is that leading towards in terms of the stories and the headlines that they're mostly clicking on?
So, to give you an example of where the East Coast is, our first syndication partner was the New York Daily News, when it was still independent. And so it was a long negotiation. And finally, the guy in charge, who I shall remain nameless, sends me a thing that says, "One last question." And I'm like, "Okay." And he says, in New York, marijuana is still illegal. Why should we cover it in the New York Daily News? And my response is, when we look at all the usage charts, New York City is always the number one city in marijuana use. And in New York City, you can buy the exact same thing that you can buy in LA or the Bay Area or San Diego. You're just buying it from a guy who delivers it in a case or something.
Hmm.
And his response was, "Let's get this partnership rolling." So why they're traditional legal states, usage is very similar to the same. But just like with the canna-curious and the cannabis emerging market, it is a slow rollout. We get a lot of feedback that people get overwhelmed in legal state stores because there's so many options. And
Hmm.
those that have perhaps used it recreationally prior to legalization, shall we say, they had much fewer options and felt much more comfortable with the options. It's the difference between going to, say, In-N-Out Burger and the Cheesecake Factory. In-N-Out Burger, very few choices, but it's going to be good, and it's going to be something you want to come back to. Cheesecake Factory, it's like 17 pages of food, and you don't know how it's going to turn out. So, it's a journey as you go into legalization. What we hear, it's definitely a journey, and stores often the perception is stores give too much of an
Hmm.
example. Unlike historically, because we're historically a drinking company, you can go into a Bevmo or a Total, and people pretty well know, I'm a vodka drinker, I drink bourbon, and they kind of know, they might know a portion, and then they're tickled because there's a bigger portion that they're used to, but they have a long history, and chances are their family has a history in drinking a particular type of alcohol.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think with what you said earlier about Florida and Texas being conservative and yet having some of the highest click rates, I find that really interesting. Um, so in the eventuality that national legalization happens, you're going to see conservative spots like Florida and Texas, adding. And you'll have maybe dry counties like Texas already has, but there's a lot to those states. Um, what are you kind of seeing? Because I'm interested in where both of them are going. I don't think Florida you're going to be able to grow much, but Texas and Florida is going to consume a lot. So what are they really diving into in a lot of the conservative regions? As I kind of imagine them just waiting for that opportunity to dig themselves out of a financial hole and add CBD and
Well,
THC to the list.
you have to remember, 4 years ago when they elected, it was something like 63% voted for the legalization of medical marijuana, and they said you had to reach a threshold, I think, of 65%, and the governor, stopped it, stop, 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 stop. So this last election, um, in I think 18, 71% of Floridians voted for medical marijuana. So that tells you something right there. The panhandle of Florida is probably one of the most robust marijuana growing regions in the country. The panhandle of Florida, lower Mississippi, lower Alabama, and lower Georgia is probably some of the most robust marijuana growing areas of the country because it's rich farmland, lots of water, and all that sort of stuff. So there is a hefty market that will emerge. And I think when you see full legalization, you will see a hit taken on some of the big growers now because they're indoor grow, and outdoor grow will become very big because it's much cheaper. And you know it's a case within amongst some conservatives of, well, now that it's legal, I can make money on it, so let's go full torpedo ahead.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's not unlike the lottery. If you remember, no one wanted a lottery until all the money was there, and then everybody has a lottery now.
That's an interesting point.
Did
Uh,
that answer your question?
yes, so we're seeing $411 million in last month that California purchased, and then with Illinois, you're seeing on average people going in there buying $110 per visit. But so I'm envisioning some of that in Illinois to be outside of the
Right.
state, just like in Washington State, we had people coming in from Idaho and Portland coming in. But the majority of them, I would imagine, don't want to go back and stand in line and do all of that buying a bunch back. So I would imagine that Florida, Texas, whatever new onboarding state's going to go through the same thing. Um, is it recreation, or is it more about medical in those two areas? Are people looking at CBD articles? Or are they looking at edible articles? Do you know?
So I'm going to answer that two ways. So remember, pre-COVID and right into COVID, Chicago is one of the travel hub. That's one of the three travel hubs, real travel hubs that are open
Mm.
for recreational. So you have LA, you have the Bay Area, and then you have Chicago. So those are all big travel hubs. So you have a lot of people who can come in, buy it up, and fly out with it, or drive to it and fly out with it. So that's one of the reasons I think Illinois does really well. CBD is huge. It's becoming ubiquitous. When we launched the Fresh Toast at the very end of 2016, CBD was considered a subset of the marijuana world. And now CBD is expected to be its own standalone industry and is expected to be as big. It is they track it similar to the supplement industry and the vitamin industry. So it's moving into that area. So CBD is very popular. The issue is it has launched itself in a way with often more product information than regular information. So you can buy it at Amazon, you can buy it at Walmart, you can buy it in all these places, and it's like this. So CBD in it, and as we've found, because it's not particularly well regulated, it may not be true. So people use CBD often as a experiment. And what they're using CBD for is anxiety and sleep and pain around, say, pain around joint pain, that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, when it comes to CBD, it tends to be around some type of issue. People just don't like, hey, it's Wednesday afternoon, let's have some CBD. People don't do that. Or they might get CBD water because I have a busy day and this is going to get me going. That's what they're looking for. Whereas weed, we know a majority of weed is used for recreational, not unlike beer, not unlike wine, not unlike alcohol. There's definitely people who need weed for medical issues, but that's also in a much more constrained. People just don't go, oh, I have a backache, I have neck or shoulder pain or arm pain. Let me smoke a joint. No, they don't do that. They're like, usually it's around something a little bit more. I have GERD, I have anxiety, I have esophageal problems, so I'm taking a oil, so I could do that. So that tends to be a little bit more regulated. So that's about 25% of the market. The rest is, you know what? Drinking all this beer makes me fat, so I'm going to hit a vape 3 days a week, as we see what's happening in California.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely a change of lifestyle. I think everyone's looking for more healthier alternative ways of living for sure. We're seeing that in grocery stores and everywhere else. So CBD as a supplement, guaranteed, yeah, more cannabinoids are going to be there. Whereas CBG or CBN, pain, sleep, anxiety, all those things, people are definitely going to be looking for.
We've worked with a couple of celebrities, and one celebrity wife, who shall remain nameless, who could fit into her cheerleader costume from college 40 years earlier. Part of her thing is she never drinks, she only vapes because she doesn't get any of the calories, and she feels a stronger control system.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you really look at from females' point of view, especially in college, we also see it is easier for a college girl to vape and have better control, because when you're out I don't know if you drink, but if you're out at a bar in college, people are buying you drinks, let's do a shot. All of a sudden, without paying attention, you could be really wasted.
Hmm.
And it's also a lot of peer pressure. People don't go vape, 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 vape. You can control it, and it's a closed system, so you don't have to worry about anything being put into your drink.
Right.
Being something, like a date rape drug or just an extra shot that might get you stumbling.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I actually haven't had anything to drink for a year. I quit drinking coffee like over 6 months ago, so I'm trying to cut it out. I'm sure I'll drink again, but it was for health reasons. I was overweight from the. I'll blame it on the pandemic. Too
Well, you
much.
look great.
Oh, thank you. I've lost I guess maybe like 20 pounds since I don't know, 6 7 months. So
Good job.
gyms
Good
are
job.
back open, and I'm not eating the garbage that my wife was bringing in the house early last year. I'll blame that on her because I don't want to take responsibility for it.
Well, I mean, I think everyone, had the COVID-7 or the COVID-10 or COVID-8, whatever
It-
they say.
yeah. I mean, in
Yeah,
all honesty, though,
people.
sugar is really, really hard for me. I've done a lot of drugs and I've done a lot of things, and sugar is really, really hard for me to cut out. I have no willpower, and um, I don't even really apologize when I eat all of the candy that my wife's bring home and she doesn't get any of it. I just don't have any self-control or willpower. Anyways, I
I
digress.
love how you're just so brutally honest.
Yeah.
But here's part of the issue when it comes to edible and beverages. Unlike most other parts in the countries in the world, we are volume consumers.
Mhm.
That's why you have a buca de beppo. We look at a plate that you might get in Europe of pasta, and we're like, "What's this? Where's the rest?" So
Yeah.
we're always about volume. No one rarely does someone have one beer. They have four beers or six pack. Rarely do you have one cocktail. You have multiple cocktails. So the difference is, you really can't eat unless, especially starting off, you can't eat a whole edible or at least or two edibles. It's all about portion control.
Mm.
And that is something that as a consumer population we have to better understand.
The Mexican plates in here, like Azteca is a popular Mexican restaurant here, and the plates are just enormous, and the food is like for a tiny village, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with all this?
Well,
Whereas I'm used to, I've lived in Japan and I've visited Europe, and I like the tapas style, the Japanese izakaya plates, that shareable plates. I don't know what that means, like culturally. Like, are they, in Japan, if your water's low, they fill your water up. So are they going to go and like make sure your bong water's clean, or in Europe, is everyone going to share joints? Or I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but interesting to see, like, with legalization worldwide, how the culture is going to change. I'm definitely interested in the future and what's going to happen. Um, you guys did a crystal ball prediction. I think the Fresh Toast had something about a month or so ago about crystal ball predictions. And I'm wondering if I can get your take on that, because I took the Fresh Toast and about a dozen other publishers. I aggregated that, albeit a small data set,
right.
and then had, maybe like 40 different data points on. It was about half as last year, which made me think people didn't really know what was going to happen because this year's so crazy. Having said that, here's what we got. Last year, price and profit was number one. It slipped to the sixth slot as legal and regulation and politics. I kind of put that all together. Hits the number one. Crystal ball predictions for 2021 in the hemp and cannabis space. Almost 42% thought that something to do with either added legal states and or federal legalization was going to happen. And just wondering about your take on some of these, either personally, what you think is going to happen, um, either in this order, or you can pick and choose what you think 2021 is going to look like.
Well, I think one. I think one is obvious. I mean, the administration said that they're going to do something. States need money, so I think you're going to see by the end of this year a fundamental shift on the legalization of cannabis. Now, will it be decriminalized? Maybe. Will it be fully open market? Maybe. And what people don't realize is the after effects of all that. Let's say if Biden tomorrow, fully decriminalized cannabis, you're going to have a whole change because then FDA is getting in. You have all these government regulatory agencies. It'll be 2 or 3 years before anything gets done. But definitely, there's going to be change because we need that revenue, and the public wants it.
Mhm. Yeah, once
So
banking is legalized, then you have all kinds of opportunities and things are just gonna go crazy after that.
you'll have a surge of investor money because now someone like a CalPERS can come in, or somebody, you have all sorts of people can come in. Now consolidation is going to happen because once interstate commerce happens, there's not a reason for for people. You'll see companies consolidate, and they could be a Northwest company, they could be a West Coast company, they could be a Midwest company, they could be a national company, and have efficiencies by running it that way. The
Mhm.
other thing that's happening is COVID, we got probably every day 8 pitches. We're going to be the Veuve Clicquot or the Krug of cannabis. We're going to be super high end. But when you really look at consumer behavior, that's a really small portion of the market. The people who make money are the people who make, Hershey's and Del Monte, and who make $2 Chuck. They're the one who make rolling the money. When I started the Fresh Toast, people, I'd be at a party, especially in LA, with some of my society girlfriends, and they'd be like, "He's doing the Vanity Fair of cannabis," and I'm like, "No, I'm doing the McDonald's of cannabis." And they're like, "Oh, that's not as attractive." I'm like, "Which would you rather own? One super fine dining restaurant or a chain of McDonald's?" And they're like, "Well, you can always eat well if you own the super high end." And I'm like, "And if you own the chain of McDonald's, they'll come to your house and cook it because you can afford it." So, so you're going to see consolidation. And I think we've already seen a reconfiguring where more people are going to mid market
Mhm.
of what you want. I don't know if you go to Target or Amazon Go or where else I was at this week, um, where we were looking at different stores, and Amazon Go and Target, it's all mid market for
Mm.
alcohol, and so when they start carrying weed, it's going to be the exact same thing.
Mm. What's gonna sell
So
the most? Not high end, not low end, just the middle. It's volume.
right, it's all about it's volume at a profit,
Mm.
which is a good thing. Now, when it comes to the consumer, price versus profit is a huge issue, because when you look at who's doing the best in alcohol sales, and I say alcohol sales because there's so many more people selling alcohol right now, and it's really the alcohol you could buy at a Kroger or a Fred Meyer or um, uh, uh, a Publix, which we're not a big fan of right now, but all these chains, it's whatever's accessible is what winds up being your biggest sellers. So when you have a product company and you want legalization, but the moment legalization comes all the big players, no, maybe not Walmart to begin with, but Target and Bevmo and Total, and they're going to push lower and mid market stuff. And so
Yeah,
that's where it's going to be.
and probably push out a lot of businesses if we follow what happened with the coffee industry. A lot of mom and pops got squeezed out. A lot of beer manufacturers actually were able to proliferate because of the mediocrity. I guess when you have just an average beer, for example, you want micro beers. You want maybe a specialized barista, whether that's a bikini barista or whatever. There's going to be specialized cannabis retailers for whatever fancy you have, either a discerning customer or just somebody who wants to buy bud from a half naked individual. There's going to have to be some kind of circus show to sell more
Well,
to.
it's funny you brought up beer. So 3 beers represent 52% of the market. You know what those 3 beers are?
I'm guessing Miller and Budweiser and Corona or something,
Close,
Constellation Brands.
close. So the top 3 beers that own 52% of the entire beer market: Bud Light, Miller Light, Coors Light.
Hmm.
Those 3 beers represent 52% of all beer sales.
Wow.
Now, during COVID, a huge number of craft breweries went under. And the reason for that is they made their money on direct visits,
Hmm.
people coming to the brewery, coming buying food, making it there. And when that stopped, because they don't have a robust distribution system, back to they couldn't get to, they weren't selling their stuff at Target or a Bodega or Bevmo or CVS. And so they don't have that distribution. So as we go into legalization, what's going to really happen is those who can't scale and distribute will become very boutiquey. The last time we've had an industry like this was with the let's call it non-TV film entertainment. It started off with VHS, and do you know why we have VHS as opposed to the other type?
Beta, wasn't it Betamax? I
Do you
don't
know why we chose VHS over Betamax?
I don't remember, no.
The porn industry went with VHS,
Ah.
and so the moment they did that, that shot up VHS sales, and Beta fell away.
Mm.
So porn's given us mass publishing, it's given us VHS, and it gave us online banking or online pay systems, and it gave us streaming. They pioneered all four of those things.
Mm.
Just this little side note for the porn industry. But so we had these VHS that then went into all these mom and pop stores. It's like Third Avenue Video and Grandma's Video, and so all that went well. And then all of a sudden you had Blockbuster and Hollywood come along and either closed or gobbled up all these little ones. And then all of a sudden Hollywood Video and Blockbuster are like, oh, we're really great, we're the best thing ever. And then all of a sudden the grocery stores were like, hey, we're going to take a piece of that pie. And all of a sudden Hollywood Video goes under and Blockbuster starts shrinking, and the grocery stores are like, we're making a bunch of money. And then along comes Netflix. And all of a sudden they're like, wait, what? You can just see it on your TV? So we saw, and you saw content creators, you saw distributors, and then you saw retailers, and you saw how within a period of really 20 years, an entire industry came and went. And so, but it's a good indication for the cannabis industry, because when legalization comes, they have to figure out how it's going to fit in the bigger scheme of a consumer's life and a business's life.
There's
very geeky. I feel very bad about that.
No, that was awesome. It's got my brain going. I'm thinking about things that are going to work and not going to work. Cannabis lounges are going to get delayed. Delivery is going to get fast tracked. What else, as the pandemic kind of created this? A stay at home probably got fast tracked 10 years.
So stay at home is great. And, I think COVID was a benefit for cannabis, because it allowed people to try something they might not have tried if they still had to be in an extended social circle. Mm-hmm. They were able to chill out, do something. And so what you saw is an increase in cannabis use, and it's making people more comfortable with it, as opposed to, you know what, we have nothing to do this weekend, let's try a edible, as opposed to, oh, we have this thing and we have this thing, and we're seeing the kids, we're doing our playmates, playmates, kids, parents, and all this other stuff. So now it's kind of shrugging down, and people are like, okay, well, let's try it. No one's going to judge us. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you're seeing more people more comfortable with it all. It also helped with a lot of people's sleep, because sleep was the number one thing people were willing to give up sex for sleep. More people were willing to give up sex for sleep during COVID than anything else.
That's interesting. The number 5 on this list of 2021 predictions is demand. That demand will be just as high as it was last year, as cannabis was deemed essential business. 11% think the demand is going to remain where it's at, with including like new cannabinoids, including CBD and hemp, all those things, with possibly international expansion. Even though we saw some of the Canadians kind of pulling back out of Colombia, they still want it. So with Israel and Mexico legalizing, what's that going to do to investment?
So demand is, demand's not going to have anything sharp until 2 years after legalization, because it goes back to ease for the consumer. And I've been at a lot of conferences, and it's always about what's my profit margin and what's my distribution. And rarely do they think about where's the customer going to purchase. So before you quit drinking, what was your favorite drink? What did you drink most often, I should say?
A red blend.
So great. How many times did you go to a wine shop as opposed to picking something up at the grocery store or something?
Yeah, grocery store is a lot more convenient. So price and convenience are my 2 top decision makers, like everybody else.
Yeah. And so therefore, when I have to go to a separate store to purchase one thing, that's why you don't see a lot of all beer stores.
Mm.
You can pick up beer anywhere and you can get different things, but you don't go to, oh yeah, we're going to drive across town or we're going to drive an extra 8 blocks and go to the beer store to pick up something, because its convenience is the whole critical part to it all. And we have to also think we're not in a vacuum. Once we become fully legal, there's going to be a market, there's going to be an outdoor grow market here. And especially in states like Kentucky, that is a traditional tobacco, this is another crop they can do. Same with Mexico. Mexico has a robust grow environment now. They're going to push that into, if the numbers work out. And when I say if the numbers work out, it's cheap. It's, let's say it's more cost effective in their current distribution system for it to be in a legal environment. And if it was in a legal environment, they would have an overlay of regulation and taxes. But Mexico has a huge, I mean, Mexico doesn't rely on the US to furnish all their weed now. So the fact that we would assume that Mexico would suddenly go, we're legal, we're only buying this, might not necessarily be an exam. And the other thing is Colombia, so you have all these countries that are great grow countries pushing out to Europe. Um, there's a mindset that, oh, here's the companies that are now. There'll be lots more companies that grow up, and why wouldn't you want to grow it outdoors? Because it's easier and cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's going to be a lot cheaper with federal legalization. So I was just at the vape shop and I saw that tobacco, a pound of tobacco is $18.99. I was like, wow, that's going to be amazing when cannabis is like, we'll just say $89.99 for a pound. I'll deal with that. I feel lucky enough to get $500 pounds right now. $30 ounces are really, really nice. So I think Oregon, you can get that at a retail shop. But I'm wondering with Kentucky, you mentioned Kentucky, and I think they have the least funded pension plan in the country. So will Mitch McConnell look to cannabis eventually to fill those coffers?
Who who pushed through the bill to help hemp grow in Kentucky?
I don't know. Was it Mitch?
Mitch McConnell.
Was it? He was a little late to the show, though,
Because
wasn't he?
it came down to economic hardship and keeping jobs. Because tobacco. So who are when it goes legal? Who are the three industries that are going to make weed go legal? Who are the three industries that are driving this in Congress?
Oh, I would say the alcohol industry. Um, uh, there's tobacco and pharmaceutical for sure.
Ding. And they have a lot more influence on legalization than the weed industry does. Remember, the weed industry does basically In-N-Out Burger and Subway in sales all year. So if you took the whole weed industry, it equals the amount of sales that In-N-Out Burger and Subway does during the course of the year.
Hmm.
So think about that in the scope of it all. So that really isn't that big of an economic push globally or nationally. Alcohol is super invested. Tobacco is super invested in, sees where it's going, and also now all their technology coming out for vaping is geared to also be able to use weed. And then pharmaceutical sees it as a way to, as a brand new, a whole new revenue stream for a whole new set of treatments for illnesses, drugs, accidents, etc. So those three are really kind of moving across the system. So when that happens, you're going to see a lot of change. And alcohol actually is, in my opinion, the best partner. Alcohol knows how to get it into hotels. Alcohol knows how to do a distribution. They know how to do it in a restaurant, and they can blend it together. Weed is never going to replace alcohol because our culture doesn't. We're a drinking culture, but it will definitely be a big complement.
Yeah.
I don't think you will ever see a national change of consumption lounges because they just won't appeal to a lot of people. If, um, you know, unless they have food, and then all of a sudden, what if the girl doesn't like it? Um, most girls don't go to cigar bars. So, I mean, here's a perfect example. There's not a national chain of cigar bars.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, El Gaucho has a cigar bar, but it's very, very small, and I don't think El Gaucho is like everywhere.
and
Um,
it's also a part of their bigger, it's part of their bigger um, footprint.
mhm. But will we have something similar to what the red light district has in Amsterdam, where you can go to a bar and also consume, obviously you can't burn inside, but you know, that's nice because when I was over there, at least my wife could, drink some wine and then I could smoke a joint. And that made for a lot better things rather than me staring at her going, "Are you almost done yet?"
There you go. And so, but it's funny because I've spent the last couple of years talking to the alcohol and restaurant industry. I've been a keynote to a lot of big conferences, and the ultimate is to be at an Olive Garden. In an Olive Garden, the average sale is 2.5 glasses of wine.
Mm.
So, what's the ideal? You and your wife go. You have one vape. She has two glasses of wine, and your vape might be $20. Her 2 glasses of wine are $12, and so they're getting a comparable amount. But what also is most likely to happen is another couple might go, they might get one vape and a glass of wine to begin with, and then maybe one more glass of wine. Because now they've chilled out. It's a vape that isn't too strong so they can drive. And then they're choosing to have the wine on top of that because people are used to having that wine to accent their dinner.
Hmm. Yeah. Or they might have one of those strains that gives them the munchies, and then they just order a whole food platter, and then next thing you know, their bills.
More. Yeah, endless breadbasket.
That's not going to help.
Yeah, I'm not even sure the places that have the endless stuff would like to do the munchie one.
No, no, no. That's going to be a different model for sure. They have to change that up. That's funny. Anything we didn't cover? Anything that you are anticipating to be a big story that isn't a story yet? Anything you want to cover at all?
I think when it goes legal, you're going to be surprised at who jumps in. I think you're, and I think what's going to be anticlimactic is the general public's just going to take it as if it was another beer rolling out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there will be as much consumer uprising as there was with New Coke.
That's great. So there's only two states that are left out at this point, Idaho and North Dakota. Is that right? Um, so
Idaho is built in such a way you can go anywhere and get it.
Yeah. So are they gonna just like wait until it's federal? Are they gonna be the last ones to approve it, or is it gonna be this just island around Idaho that you just have to like go around because there's just no they
So
just
let's just remember also, Idaho and North Dakota are Idaho's different because they have the Sun Valley, all that area, but in general, they tend to be more go it alone, anti-government type of people. That does not mean that product is not available to everybody who wants it.
Well, yeah, I've Spokane, Washington can attest for that because they get a lot of sales from their Idaho residents crossing the border and buying in Spokane.
I'm sure they have local dealers who also fulfill their need too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
same with North Dakota. It's all about, it's this hypocrisy of I don't want to do that because that's wrong, and where's my portion of it?
Do you have any opinions about Montana back in the day reversing their medical stance, very similar to what South Dakota is trying to do with their judge, reversing that, or the delay on New Jersey's part? I mean, Virginia wanting to launch in 2024. It's like, how long does this take?
Well, it actually, to roll out a program does take a while because once you start doing medical in a legal entity, there's a lot of oversight to it all to make you have consistency in product. But let's be real when it comes, especially to New Jersey, New York, etc. Do you know what the battle is over? Is who's getting the money?
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm this rough numbers, 10 license in the state of New York. Do you know what you had to do to get that license?
Be in business for 30 years and pay 20 million.
To apply for the license, you had to pay $1 million fee upfront, non-refundable, and you had to have 5 million lined up, including the real estate.
Oh,
that could be an escrow, so you could have that in commitments, but you had to pay $1 million. They had over 50 companies apply, and they gave 10 license. So the state made 40 some odd $million for doing nothing.
Wow. That's
So
like Ohio.
And let's think of New York, New Jersey. As we know, they have shall we call it a complicated governmental system?
sidestepping the corruption there a little.
Because it is a lot of money. And I will say Colorado has done the best. Colorado has the best taxing system. They got rid of the most. They are the one who's gotten rid of the most of the black market, the illegal market. They've done the best job, and rarely has anybody done. And you look at California. California has fumbled the rollout because they couldn't figure out. They couldn't say, "Here's the model for the state." It was like, "Oh, this and this," and everyone kept trying to put their hand in their pocket. You know, many people go to a legal store, like what they find, and then find someone who'll sell it to them cheaper.
I like Colorado's vertically integrated opportunities. You can grow, you can produce, you can sell, and it really keeps everything streamlined and the price point competitive. And you can see that in some of these, analytics companies like Headset, where you can see the competitive nature. And Washington has a ton of brands, so we're competitive, but a lot of companies have multiple brands. You go to Colorado and it seems like it's more competitive, because they're able to kind of control that whole, the whole supply chain. So I really like their model as well.
And there's some great point of sale companies out there.
Yeah.
So we love them.
Yep. Cool. I think with that, I think we're going to roll this one up. JJ McKay, where can they get you? Where can they find you at? What are some links?
They can email me at publisher@thefreshtoast.com. They could follow us on social media at Get Fresh Toast. They can go onto Facebook and follow the Fresh Toast or the Fresh Toast News. Or they could, and on some days, they could read us in their local paper.
Great. We'll have some of those links in the description in the show notes as well. So with that, I think we're going to roll this one up. I want to thank my guest, JJ McKay. He is the founder and publisher at Fresh Toast. JJ, thanks for being on the Talking Hedge.
Thank you and have a great day.
I will. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.